All right, UFC ran last night, a big show from the T-Mobile Arena.
Huge. I got to say that. So the Conor McGregor, and this is as of about 5 minutes ago, already had topped 10 million searches. And that's like Ronda Rousey numbers. I mean, so this show, if it was like the old method, seriously would have done like over 2 million buys. That's how ridiculous. And a lot of this is because ESPN, when it comes to these shows, and it always was, if you remember, like the shows that always did the really big numbers were the ones ESPN got behind. And ESPN has probably never pushed a show as much as this one because, you know, ESPN's owns the pay-per-view rights. So they promoted this thing like crazy over the last week. And because, you know, it's their thing. And this was the one, you know, they made a giant cash outlay to UFC for the pay-per-view rights, and the pay-per-view business last year was not particularly good at all. I mean, there were a few shows. The John Jones shows did well, but I think the Masvidal and Nate Diaz show did well. But as a general rule, you know, they paid, you know, if it was something like $200 million, and that's a lot of pay-per-view buys. So they were really looking at this one to you know, make their money back and be a big hit. So they did everything they could. ABC had coverage today. They did everything to promote it, and they promote it like crazy. And when ESPN gets behind something like that, it becomes like the talk of the sports world. And there was by far, nothing even close. Conor McGregor was the most searched topic. I mean, 10 million searches is like, you know, that's like a Super Bowl. I mean, you know, realistically, maybe a little below a Super Bowl, but it's just outrageous numbers. I mean, again, you know, McGregor's previous fights probably didn't do that. I mean, the Mayweather fight did, of course, but you know, it wouldn't do that many buys because there's so many people who are not going to buy streaming. But whatever the number is, that I mean, they did. You know, whatever it is, they had remarkable interest at a level that, you know, only the top shows in the history of UFC have ever had. And because of how McGregor looked, his next fight, I believe, will be much bigger. They needed a big win. He got the big win. Dana was talking about Khabib as the next fight, but Khabib's got to get through Tony Ferguson. You know, they obviously on the show really wanted to push the idea of Masvidal. That would be a big fight as well. Usman would be a big fight. Is right after Conor won, Floyd posted wanting the idea of Conor and Floyd, which is like, of course Floyd wants that. It's easy money. There's talk about Conor and Pacquiao at the new stadium, the new football stadium that the Raiders are going to be playing in Las Vegas. So there's, you know, Conor needed the win. It was as impressive as it's going to be. He won in 40 seconds, so he didn't get hit once. So no injuries, and it opened the door for all kinds of giant fights over the next year. So, yeah, I don't know if, you know, whatever. I don't know if it's Cerrone got caught. I don't know if Cerrone got old. Certainly Conor looked good, but, you know, whatever. It was big. It was so big that among the most searched topics, in the top 20 searches for today, not only was Conor McGregor in there, but Anthony Pettis was in there. Macy Barber, who wasn't even on the main card, who lost in the top prelim, was in there. Raquel Pennington was in. Alexei Olenek was in the top searches. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was like, essentially, it was like everybody was watching and curious and whatever. So they did, I mean, I'm sure that they probably did double the record on ESPN, you know, whatever it is for streaming pay-per-views. I would say this would be a very safe bet that this was the most streamed pay-per-view in history, you know, beating probably the Logan Paul fight was probably the most streamed before. So, and this is just the United States. They did, you know, I'm sure they did well in the UK and Ireland. So, you know, it was, Yeah, it was whatever the streaming record is. They probably broke it with by a good margin.
So Conor beat Donald Cerrone, 40 seconds of the first round. They clinched right at the bell. Conor actually missed a shot and they clinched. And then Conor started hitting with these shoulder blocks and busted up Cerrone's nose. And he hit a hard high kick, starts pounding on the guy. Cerrone covered up, turtled up. Herb Dean's right there, but he was letting it go. And McGregor landed 5 or 6 unanswered shots, and Herb called the fight at 40 seconds.
There was actually, before the shoulders, there was a knee to the head that Cerrone was like ducking, maybe for like a takedown, and Conor got him with a knee, and then Conor threw like 5 shoulder strikes that busted his nose, and he was also swollen under the eye, and then he landed a great high kick, and that was, after that Cerrone was done. He took a lot of punches on the ground, but that high kick was the the main blow. But he was rocked by the knee. He couldn't respond to the knee, and then he took the shoulders, and they were devastating shoulders. So, just shoulder right to the face. I've never seen shoulder shots so effective. It was impressive. We didn't really get to see, a lot of answers because it's in a 40-second fight. It's like you don't really know what you saw. It just it just happened. Like, again, I don't know if Cerrone is. I mean, I thought when Cerrone fought Justin Gaethje in his last fight that Cerrone looked old, and that's why I thought that, this was a good opponent for Conor because he's a big name, he's a popular fighter, it would draw really well, and of all of the guys that fit those categories, he's the safest fight for Conor because he's old. You get somebody like Justin Gaethje, who Conor might very well beat, but it's a lot more dangerous. But the next fight, obviously. Well, I mean, if he fights Pacquiao or Mayweather, it is what it is. It's a money grab, and Conor knows how to promote a fight. It may do really big. It's hard, there's a part of me that says, God, we already saw, that whole Conor against a boxer thing before, and it was, are people going to pay for it a second time? But it's like, and it will be different because that would be real pay-per-view, television pay-per-view, because it won't be a UFC show. It will be on a boxing show, which means it can be that's where they can do their 2 or 3 million buys or so, because it's not limited to streaming. If they do, for a UFC show, it's going to be no matter who it is, it'll be the streaming, which cuts it down. But the big thing is ESPN will then. Either way, ESPN's going to promote it like crazy. But if it's ESPN's own property, which would be a UFC fight, they'll promote the hell out of it. And UFC will make other stars, because like the whole thing here is like everyone on this card basically was seen by so many people that I'm not saying they all became stars, but I think that some of the winners did.